Question 1. Comparative studies suggest that the integrity of medical university entrance examinations is crucial for maintaining public trust and ensuring the selection of qualified future healthcare professionals. In the context of the Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences entrance exam, if a high-ranking government official contacts the admissions committee requesting special consideration for a candidate who has not met the standard academic prerequisites for admission, what is the most ethically and procedurally sound course of action for the admissions committee? Option A. Inform the official that the candidate's application will be reviewed with a slight adjustment to the prerequisite requirements to facilitate their admission. Option B. Forward the official's request to the candidate's family, suggesting they explore alternative admission pathways if available. Option C. Grant the candidate admission as a gesture of goodwill towards the government official, overriding the standard admission criteria to accommodate the request. Option D. Evaluate the candidate strictly based on the established admission criteria and the results of the entrance examination, while politely informing the official that all candidates are treated equally under university policy. The correct answer is D. Evaluate the candidate strictly based on the established admission criteria and the results of the entrance examination, while politely informing the official that all candidates are treated equally under university policy. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's established admission policies and the potential for external influence or perceived favoritism. Maintaining the integrity of the entrance examination process is paramount to ensuring fairness and upholding the reputation of Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences. Careful judgment is required to navigate such situations without compromising ethical standards or regulatory compliance. The correct approach involves strictly adhering to the established admission criteria and the official examination procedures as outlined by Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences. This means evaluating all candidates solely based on their performance in the entrance exam and their fulfillment of documented academic prerequisites. This approach is ethically sound and legally compliant because it upholds the principle of equal opportunity for all applicants and prevents any undue advantage or disadvantage based on personal connections or external pressures. It aligns with the university's commitment to merit-based selection, which is a fundamental tenet of academic institutions. An incorrect approach would be to deviate from the established admission criteria to accommodate a request from a high-ranking official. This would constitute a breach of fairness and could be interpreted as corruption or favoritism, undermining the credibility of the examination process. Such an action would violate the ethical principles of impartiality and integrity expected of university admissions committees and staff. Furthermore, it could contravene internal university regulations and potentially national guidelines governing academic admissions, leading to disciplinary action and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the request entirely without any formal acknowledgement or adherence to established protocols for handling such inquiries. While seemingly neutral, this could lead to misunderstandings or accusations of unprofessionalism if the request is perceived as legitimate but unaddressed. A more appropriate response would be to politely but firmly reiterate the university's commitment to its established, transparent admission procedures. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve 1. Understanding and internalizing the university's admission regulations and ethical guidelines. 2. Recognizing the potential for conflicts of interest or undue influence. 3. Prioritizing fairness, transparency, and meritocracy in all decisions. 4. Communicating clearly and professionally, adhering to established procedures for handling inquiries or requests. 5. Seeking guidance from senior university officials or legal counsel if the situation is complex or carries significant risk. Question 2. Stakeholder feedback indicates that some applicants for the Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences entrance exam may have received advance information regarding specific question topics, potentially creating an unfair advantage. As a member of the Examination Oversight Committee, what is the most appropriate immediate course of action to uphold the integrity of the examination process? Option A. Publicly announce a review of the examination process to reassure stakeholders, without immediately launching a formal investigation to avoid premature accusations. Option B. Advise the examination board to proceed with the scheduled exam as planned, while promising to address any irregularities discovered after the results are published. Option C. Immediately disqualify all candidates who were mentioned in the feedback, regardless of the veracity of the claims, to demonstrate a zero-tolerance policy. Option D. Initiate a confidential and thorough investigation into the allegations, gathering all available evidence and interviewing relevant parties, in accordance with Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences examination regulations and ethical guidelines. Correct answer is D. Initiate a confidential and thorough investigation into the allegations, gathering all available evidence and interviewing relevant parties in accordance with Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences examination regulations and ethical guidelines. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's need to attract qualified candidates and the ethical imperative to maintain the integrity of the entrance examination process. Ensuring fairness and preventing any form of undue advantage is paramount to upholding the credibility of Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences and the future medical professionals it trains. The university entrance exam is a critical gateway, and any perceived or actual compromise can have long-lasting repercussions on public trust and the quality of medical education. The correct approach involves a thorough, impartial investigation into the allegations, adhering strictly to the established examination regulations and ethical guidelines of Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences. This means gathering all relevant evidence, interviewing involved parties without bias, and making a determination based solely on the facts and the university's official examination policies. This upholds the principle of fairness to all candidates and maintains the integrity of the selection process, aligning with the university's commitment to academic excellence and ethical conduct. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss the feedback without investigation. This fails to acknowledge the seriousness of potential irregularities and neglects the university's responsibility to address concerns raised by stakeholders. It also risks allowing unfair practices to persist, undermining the meritocratic basis of the entrance exam. Another incorrect approach would be to immediately implement punitive measures without a proper investigation. This violates the principles of due process and fairness, potentially penalizing innocent individuals and damaging the reputation of the university through hasty and unsubstantiated actions. It also fails to identify the root cause of the alleged issue, preventing effective future prevention. A further incorrect approach would be to selectively address the feedback based on the perceived influence of the stakeholder. This introduces bias into the process, compromising the impartiality required for a fair and ethical examination system. It suggests that the university's commitment to integrity is conditional, which is unacceptable in an academic and professional setting. Professionals in such situations should employ a structured decision-making process that prioritizes evidence-based investigation, adherence to established protocols, and a commitment to fairness and transparency. This involves 1. Acknowledging and documenting all feedback. 2. Initiating a formal investigation according to university policy. 3. Gathering and analyzing all relevant evidence objectively. 4. Consulting with relevant university authorities and legal counsel if necessary. 5. Making a decision based on findings and university regulations. 6. Communicating the outcome appropriately and implementing corrective actions if warranted. Question 3. Regulatory review indicates that prospective students preparing for the Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences entrance exam are sometimes approached by individuals claiming to possess advanced knowledge of exam content. In such a situation, what is the most ethically and regulatorily sound course of action for a candidate? Option A. Report the offer to the examination authorities immediately and provide any details available about the source. Option B. Ignore the offer and continue with personal studies, assuming the information is likely false or unreliable. Option C. Accept the advance information to gain a competitive edge, rationalizing that all candidates are seeking admission. Option D. Politely decline any offer of advance information and focus solely on preparing through official study materials and syllabus. The correct answer is D. Politely decline any offer of advance information and focus solely on preparing through official study materials and syllabus. Explanation. The scenario presents a challenge for prospective medical students in understanding the ethical and regulatory framework governing medical practice in Iran, specifically as it pertains to the Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences entrance exam. The core challenge lies in discerning the appropriate ethical conduct when faced with information that could confer an unfair advantage, balancing personal ambition with academic integrity and the principles of fair competition. The correct approach involves prioritizing academic integrity and adherence to the established examination regulations. This means refraining from any action that could be construed as seeking or using unauthorized information, and instead focusing on diligent preparation based on the official curriculum and syllabus. This aligns with the ethical principles of honesty, fairness, and respect for the rules, which are foundational to the medical profession and are implicitly or explicitly enforced by university entrance exam regulations in Iran. The university's commitment to a merit-based selection process necessitates that all candidates are evaluated on their own knowledge and abilities, without external or illicit assistance. An incorrect approach would be to engage with individuals offering to provide exam questions or answers. This constitutes a direct violation of examination rules and ethical standards. Such actions undermine the integrity of the entrance exam, devalue the achievements of honest candidates, and are contrary to the principles of professional conduct expected of future medical practitioners. Furthermore, it could lead to severe penalties, including disqualification from the exam and potential blacklisting from future academic pursuits. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the offer but remain silent about it. While not actively participating in cheating, this inaction allows unethical behavior to persist and potentially harm the fairness of the examination process. Ethical responsibility often extends to reporting observed or suspected misconduct, especially when it impacts a system designed for fair evaluation. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the examination's rules and ethical expectations. And presented with an opportunity for unfair advantage, the immediate response should be to reject it unequivocally. If the offer involves potential misconduct by others, reporting it through the appropriate channels, e.g., examination authorities, is a crucial step in upholding integrity. The focus should always remain on personal merit and adherence to established procedures, recognizing that a career in medicine is built on a foundation of trust and ethical conduct. Question 4. Consider a scenario where an applicant for the Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences entrance exam is presented with a case study requiring them to describe the management of a patient with a specific rare disease. The applicant, in their written response, details the patient's demographic information, specific treatment protocols administered, and the patient's response, inadvertently including details that could potentially identify the individual if cross-referenced with local medical records. Which of the following approaches best demonstrates the applicant's understanding of ethical medical practice and academic integrity in this context? Option A. The applicant should have directly answered the question as presented, assuming that the exam context permits the use of such details for illustrative purposes. Option B. The applicant should have omitted the case study question entirely from their response to avoid any potential breach of confidentiality. Option C. The applicant should have framed their response hypothetically, focusing on the general principles of managing the rare disease and the typical treatment pathways, without including any specific patient identifiers or unique treatment details that could lead to identification. Option D. The applicant should have provided a highly generalized answer about the disease without referencing any specific patient management, even if it meant not fully addressing the prompt. The correct answer is C. The applicant should have framed their response hypothetically, focusing on the general principles of managing the rare disease and the typical treatment pathways, without including any specific patient identifiers or unique treatment details that could lead to identification. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the ethical imperative to maintain patient confidentiality and the legal obligation to adhere to university regulations regarding academic integrity. The applicant's disclosure of sensitive patient information, even in a hypothetical context for an entrance exam, directly conflicts with the principles of patient privacy enshrined in medical ethics and potentially violates specific data protection guidelines relevant to medical institutions in Iran, including those implicitly governing Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences. The exam's purpose is to assess the applicant's understanding of medical principles and their ethical application, not to solicit confidential patient data. The correct approach involves demonstrating an understanding of medical ethics and patient confidentiality by framing the answer hypothetically without revealing any identifiable patient details. This approach upholds the principle of do no harm by protecting patient privacy and adheres to the spirit of the exam, which seeks to evaluate conceptual knowledge and ethical reasoning. It aligns with the expected professional conduct of future medical practitioners who must be vigilant in safeguarding patient information. An incorrect approach that directly discloses patient information, even if anonymized to the applicant's perception, fails to recognize the inherent sensitivity of medical data and the strict requirements for its protection. This demonstrates a significant lapse in ethical judgment and a misunderstanding of professional responsibilities. Such a failure could lead to disciplinary action by the university and would raise serious concerns about the applicant's suitability for a medical career. Another incorrect approach might be to refuse to answer the question altogether, which, while protecting confidentiality, fails to demonstrate the applicant's understanding of the medical concepts being tested, thus not fulfilling the exam's objective. A third incorrect approach could be to provide a vague or incomplete answer that avoids the ethical dilemma, but also fails to showcase adequate knowledge, thereby not meeting the academic standards of the entrance exam. The professional decision-making process in such a situation requires a careful balancing of the exam's requirements with fundamental ethical and legal obligations. Applicants should first identify the core ethical principle at stake, patient confidentiality. Then, they should consider how to address the exam question in a manner that respects this principle. This involves abstracting the medical scenario to its core components, allowing for a demonstration of knowledge without compromising privacy. If the question inherently demands disclosure of protected information, the applicant should seek clarification or frame their response hypothetically, emphasizing the ethical constraints. Question 5. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of academic underperformance among first-year medical students, with a high impact on future patient care if inadequately prepared graduates enter practice. Considering the Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences entrance exam's emphasis on developing competent and ethical practitioners, which of the following strategies best addresses this risk while adhering to the university's regulatory framework and ethical guidelines? Option A. Focus solely on the rigor of the curriculum and final examinations, assuming that students who cannot meet the standards will naturally self-select out of the program. Option B. Implement a mandatory remediation program with personalized tutoring and counseling for any student scoring below a defined threshold on formative assessments, with clear pathways for re-evaluation and progression. Option C. Offer a general study skills workshop to all students at the beginning of the semester, without specific follow-up or targeted support for those identified as struggling. Option D. Immediately place any student scoring below the passing grade on a single, high-stakes examination on academic probation, with a single opportunity for a retake exam within 1 week. The correct answer is B. Implement a mandatory remediation program with personalized tutoring and counseling for any student scoring below a defined threshold on formative assessments, with clear pathways for re-evaluation and progression. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in medical education and practice, balancing the need for rigorous assessment with the ethical imperative to support student development and well-being. The risk matrix, a tool for identifying and prioritizing potential issues, highlights that, while academic rigor is paramount for ensuring competent future medical professionals, an overly punitive or unsupportive approach can lead to student burnout, decreased learning, and potential harm to future patients if inadequately prepared individuals enter the profession. The challenge lies in implementing assessment strategies that are both effective in identifying knowledge gaps and sufficiently supportive to foster learning and resilience. The correct approach involves a multifaceted strategy that prioritizes early identification of struggling students and provides targeted, constructive support. This aligns with the ethical principles of beneficence, acting in the best interest of the student, and non-maleficence, avoiding harm, as well as the regulatory framework of Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences, which emphasizes a holistic approach to student education and professional development. Providing access to academic advisors, remedial resources, and opportunities for re-evaluation with clear feedback allows students to address deficiencies without undue stress. ultimately enhancing their preparedness for medical practice. This approach acknowledges that learning is a process, and that setbacks can be opportunities for growth when managed appropriately. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate failure and exclusion, without offering support, fails to uphold the university's commitment to student development and can be seen as a violation of ethical obligations. Such an approach risks alienating students, discouraging them from seeking help, and potentially pushing them out of the program without addressing the root causes of their difficulties. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes student comfort over academic standards would compromise the integrity of the medical education program and the quality of future healthcare providers, which is contrary to the core mission of the university and the public trust placed in medical professionals. A third incorrect approach that involves arbitrary or inconsistent application of assessment criteria would undermine fairness and due process, creating an environment of uncertainty and distrust among students. Professionals should employ a decision-making process that begins with a thorough understanding of the university's regulatory framework and ethical guidelines. This involves recognizing the dual responsibility of ensuring academic excellence and fostering student well-being. When faced with situations where students are struggling, the process should involve 1. Objective assessment of the student's performance against established criteria. 2. Early identification of potential issues. 3. Consultation with academic support services. 4. Provision of clear, constructive feedback. And 5. Offering appropriate remedial measures and opportunities for improvement, all while maintaining fairness and consistency. Question 6. The investigation demonstrates that a candidate was observed by an invigilator appearing to consult unauthorized notes during the Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences entrance exam. The invigilator reported the incident, but the candidate denies any wrongdoing, claiming the items were personal belongings unrelated to the exam content. According to the established regulations for the Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences entrance exam, what is the most appropriate immediate course of action to ensure fairness and uphold academic integrity? Option A. Allow the candidate to continue the examination, but flag their paper for special scrutiny and a post-exam investigation based on the invigilator's report. Option B. Immediately confiscate the candidate's exam materials and disqualify them from the examination pending a formal review of the evidence. Option C. Verbally warn the candidate about the suspicion of academic misconduct and instruct them to cease any potentially inappropriate behavior. Option D. Escort the candidate out of the examination hall immediately to prevent further potential breaches of conduct. The correct answer is B. Immediately confiscate the candidate's exam materials and disqualify them from the examination pending a formal review of the evidence. Explanation. The investigation demonstrates a scenario where a candidate's academic integrity is questioned during the Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences entrance exam. This situation is professionally challenging because it directly impacts the fairness and validity of the admission process, potentially affecting the careers of both the candidate and the integrity of the institution. The need for careful judgment arises from balancing the imperative to uphold academic standards with the principle of due process for the candidate. The correct approach involves a thorough, impartial, and documented investigation into the alleged academic misconduct. This approach is right because it adheres to the principles of fairness and due process, which are fundamental in any academic or professional setting. Specifically, it aligns with the guidelines of Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences regarding academic integrity and examination conduct, which mandate a systematic review of evidence before any disciplinary action is taken. This ensures that decisions are based on facts and not on mere suspicion, thereby protecting the rights of the candidate and maintaining the credibility of the examination. An incorrect approach would be to immediately disqualify the candidate based solely on the initial suspicion, without a proper inquiry. This fails to provide the candidate with an opportunity to present their side of the story or to challenge the evidence, violating the principles of natural justice and the university's own examination regulations. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the allegations altogether, which undermines the integrity of the examination process and sets a dangerous precedent for future exams, potentially allowing unqualified individuals to gain admission. A third incorrect approach would be to conduct a biased investigation, where preconceived notions influence the gathering or interpretation of evidence. This not only leads to an unjust outcome for the candidate, but also erodes trust in the university's disciplinary procedures. Professionals in such situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes evidence-based judgment, adherence to established procedures, and ethical considerations. This involves clearly defining the alleged misconduct, gathering all relevant evidence objectively, providing the accused with a fair hearing, and making a decision that is proportionate to the findings, all while maintaining confidentiality and transparency within the established regulatory framework of the Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences entrance exam. Question 7. The analysis reveals that during the Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences entrance exam admissions committee meeting, a member proposes to consider the familial relationship of a candidate to a prominent faculty member when evaluating their application, suggesting this connection might indicate a strong academic inclination. This proposal deviates from the established, documented admission criteria, which focus solely on academic performance, entrance exam scores, and interview evaluations as per the university's official admissions policy. What is the most appropriate course of action for the admissions committee member who is aware of the university's strict adherence to objective evaluation metrics? Option A. Support the proposal to consider familial relationships, arguing that such connections can be an indicator of a candidate's potential, and their degree of flexibility is necessary to identify promising individuals who might otherwise be overlooked by purely quantitative measures. Option B. Advocate for the strict application of the documented admission criteria, emphasizing that all candidates must be evaluated solely on the objective metrics outlined in the university's official admissions policy, and that introducing familial relationships as a factor would violate these regulations and compromise the integrity of the process. Option C. Suggest a compromise where familial relationships are noted but not given significant weight, allowing for a slight adjustment in the evaluation if the candidate's other qualifications are borderline, to foster goodwill within the faculty. Option D. Propose that the candidate's application be reviewed by a separate, ad hoc subcommittee composed of senior faculty, including the relative, to ensure a more thorough and nuanced assessment of their potential beyond the standard criteria. Correct answer is B. Advocate for the strict application of the documented admission criteria, emphasizing that all candidates must be evaluated solely on the objective metrics outlined in the university's official admissions policy, and that introducing familial relationships as a factor would violate these regulations and compromise the integrity of the process. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's established admission policies and the potential for external influence or perceived unfair advantage. Navigating such situations requires a deep understanding of the Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences regulatory framework, ethical guidelines for admissions, and principles of fairness and transparency. The core challenge lies in upholding the integrity of the admission process while managing relationships and potential pressures. The correct approach involves a rigorous and impartial application of the established admission criteria, documented in the university's official regulations and guidelines for the entrance exam. This ensures that all candidates are evaluated on the same objective standards, preventing any appearance of favoritism or bias. Adherence to these regulations is paramount for maintaining the credibility of the university and the fairness of the selection process, aligning with the ethical obligation to treat all applicants equitably. An incorrect approach would be to deviate from the established criteria based on personal connections or perceived influence. This action directly violates the university's admission regulations, which are designed to ensure a merit-based selection. Such a deviation undermines the principle of equal opportunity for all applicants and can lead to accusations of corruption or unfairness, damaging the university's reputation. Another incorrect approach would be to selectively apply criteria or to introduce new, undocumented factors into the evaluation process. This lack of transparency and consistency is a direct contravention of the regulatory framework governing university admissions, which mandates clear, objective, and consistently applied standards. It creates an uneven playing field and erodes trust in the admission system. A further incorrect approach would be to ignore or downplay concerns raised by other members of the admissions committee regarding potential irregularities. This failure to engage in open discussion and to address ethical concerns proactively demonstrates a disregard for the collaborative and accountable nature of the admissions process, as outlined in university governance guidelines. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a commitment to transparency, fairness, and adherence to established regulations. When faced with a potential conflict of interest or pressure to deviate from policy, a professional should 1. Clearly identify the relevant university regulations and ethical guidelines. 2. Consult with the admissions committee and relevant university authorities to ensure a shared understanding of the rules. 3. Document all decisions and the rationale behind them, ensuring a clear audit trail. 4. Prioritize the integrity and fairness of the admission process above personal relationships or external pressures. 5. If a conflict cannot be resolved within the committee, escalate the issue to higher administrative levels for guidance and decision. Question 8. Benchmark analysis indicates that during the Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences entrance exam, an invigilator observes a candidate exhibiting unusual behavior, including frequent glances, a small, concealed object in their lap, and subtle hand movements that suggest they might be referencing notes. The invigilator is concerned about potential academic dishonesty. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action for the invigilator? Option A. Ask a neighboring candidate if they have noticed the same behavior and base the decision to intervene on their confirmation. Option B. Ignore the behavior, assuming it is a minor distraction and not indicative of cheating, to avoid disrupting the examination environment. Option C. Immediately approach the candidate and publicly question them about their behavior to ascertain the nature of their actions. Option D. Discreetly observe the candidate's actions further, document specific behaviors and timings, and then report the observations to the chief invigilator or examination committee for a formal review. The correct answer is D. Discreetly observe the candidate's actions further, document specific behaviors and timings, and then report the observations to the chief invigilator or examination committee for a formal review. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the ethical imperative to uphold academic integrity and fairness during a high-stakes university entrance examination. The pressure to perform well, coupled with the competitive nature of medical school admissions, can create an environment where individuals might consider unethical shortcuts. The core of the challenge lies in balancing the need to maintain a secure and fair testing environment with the responsibility to address potential irregularities without compromising the rights of legitimate candidates. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between genuine errors, minor distractions, and deliberate attempts to cheat, ensuring that any intervention is proportionate and justified. The correct approach involves a systematic and evidence-based response that prioritizes the integrity of the examination process. This entails discreetly observing the candidate's behavior, gathering objective evidence of any suspected misconduct, and then reporting these findings to the designated examination authorities for a fair and impartial investigation. This method aligns with the principles of due process and ensures that any disciplinary action is based on substantiated facts, thereby protecting the validity of the entrance exam and the reputation of Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences. The regulatory framework for university entrance exams, as implicitly understood within the context of academic institutions, mandates adherence to strict rules of conduct and fair assessment. An incorrect approach would be to immediately confront the candidate publicly. This action could lead to unnecessary disruption, cause distress to other examinees, and potentially create a situation where the evidence of misconduct is compromised or misinterpreted. It also bypasses the established procedures for handling such matters, which are designed to ensure a thorough and unbiased review. Furthermore, making an immediate accusation without sufficient evidence can be considered a breach of professional conduct and may have legal ramifications. Another incorrect approach is to ignore the suspected behavior. This failure to act undermines the integrity of the examination process and is ethically unacceptable. It allows for potential unfair advantages to be gained by those who cheat, disadvantaging honest candidates and compromising the quality of students admitted to the university. This inaction also signals a lack of diligence and commitment to maintaining academic standards. A third incorrect approach would be to rely on hearsay or assumptions rather than direct observation and evidence. Basing a decision to intervene or report on unverified information is unprofessional and can lead to false accusations, damaging the reputation of both the student and the invigilator. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear protocol. Observe, document, report. This structured approach ensures that actions are taken based on objective facts and within the established guidelines of the examination authority, thereby upholding fairness and academic integrity. Question 9. To address the challenge of a student submitting a valid medical certificate from a reputable hospital after the deadline for requesting an extension for the Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences entrance exam, citing a severe, unexpected illness that prevented timely submission, what is the most appropriate course of action for the admissions committee? Option A. Review the medical certificate and the student's explanation to determine if the circumstances warrant a retroactive extension, considering the impact on their ability to meet the original deadline. Option B. Request additional, specific documentation that was not reasonably obtainable at the time of the emergency, regardless of the existing valid certificate. Option C. Deny the request outright due to the missed deadline, as per the strict interpretation of the exam submission guidelines. Option D. Grant an automatic extension without further review, assuming the medical certificate is sufficient proof of a valid reason. The correct answer is A. Review the medical certificate and the student's explanation to determine if the circumstances warrant a retroactive extension, considering the impact on their ability to meet the original deadline. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in academic institutions where ethical considerations intersect with administrative processes. The challenge lies in balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair evaluation with the need to accommodate students facing unforeseen personal difficulties. A hasty or overly rigid application of rules can lead to unfair outcomes, while excessive leniency can undermine the academic standards. The Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences entrance exam regulations, like those of most reputable institutions, emphasize fairness, transparency, and due process in all academic and administrative matters. The correct approach involves a thorough, individualized assessment of the student's situation, considering the provided documentation and the impact on their performance. This aligns with the university's ethical obligation to support students while upholding academic standards. It requires a nuanced understanding of the regulations, recognizing that while rules exist, their application should be context-dependent and humane. This approach prioritizes a fair and equitable resolution, adhering to the spirit of the university's policies on student welfare and academic assessment. An incorrect approach would be to summarily dismiss the student's request based solely on the absence of a specific, predefined emergency form. If the provided documentation clearly substantiates a genuine, unavoidable circumstance, this fails to acknowledge the practical realities of emergencies and the potential for documentation to be acquired retrospectively. Another incorrect approach would be to grant an automatic extension or special consideration without verifying the validity or severity of the documented situation. This undermines the principle of equal treatment for all students and could set a precedent for abuse. A third incorrect approach would be to ignore the student's plea altogether, demonstrating a lack of empathy and a disregard for the university's responsibility to support its students during difficult times, which is a breach of ethical conduct expected of academic administrators. Professionals in such situations should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the relevant university regulations and policies. They must then gather all pertinent information, including student submissions and any supporting documentation. An objective assessment of the situation, considering the impact on the student's ability to perform, is crucial. This should be followed by a reasoned decision that is consistent with university policy, ethical principles, and promotes fairness. If ambiguity exists, seeking guidance from senior administrators or relevant committees is a prudent step. Question 10. The review process indicates that an applicant for the Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences entrance exam has been recommended by a senior faculty member, who has personally contacted the admissions committee. The applicant's academic record and exam scores, while satisfactory, are not outstanding compared to the general applicant pool. The admissions committee is aware of the university's strict adherence to published admission criteria and the importance of maintaining a transparent and equitable selection process. Which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action for the admissions committee? Option A. Expedite the review process for this applicant and give their application special consideration due to the recommendation from a senior faculty member. Option B. Discuss the recommendation with the applicant's referees to gauge the applicant's overall potential beyond their academic record and exam scores. Option C. Conduct a thorough and objective review of the applicant's qualifications strictly against the published admission criteria, ensuring that the recommendation does not influence the evaluation. Option D. Inform the senior faculty member that their recommendation cannot be considered due to the strictness of the admission policies and proceed with a standard review. The correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough and objective review of the applicant's qualifications strictly against the published admission criteria, ensuring that the recommendation does not influence the evaluation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's established admission policies and the potential for external influence or perceived favoritism. Maintaining the integrity of the entrance examination process is paramount to ensuring fairness and equal opportunity for all applicants, which is a core ethical principle in academic institutions. The university's regulatory framework, as established by Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences, mandates strict adherence to published admission criteria and procedures. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective review of the applicant's qualifications against the published admission criteria, without any consideration of external recommendations or personal connections. This aligns with the university's commitment to meritocracy and the principle of treating all applicants equally. The regulatory framework for university admissions, as understood within the context of Iranian higher education, and specifically for Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences, emphasizes transparency, objectivity, and adherence to established guidelines. Any deviation from these guidelines, especially under pressure, would undermine the credibility of the admission process and could lead to accusations of bias or corruption, violating ethical standards and potentially internal university regulations. An incorrect approach would be to grant preferential treatment or alter the standard review process based on the recommendation from a senior faculty member. This directly contravenes the principle of objective evaluation and fair competition, as stipulated by the university's admission policies. Such an action would also violate ethical guidelines that prohibit favoritism and ensure that all applicants are assessed solely on their merits. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the recommendation outright without a proper review, as it fails to acknowledge the established communication channels within the university, even if the recommendation itself cannot override policy. However, the core failure lies in allowing the recommendation to influence the objective assessment of the applicant's qualifications. The professional decision-making process in such situations requires a clear understanding of the university's admission regulations and ethical codes. Professionals must prioritize adherence to established policies and procedures, ensuring that all decisions are based on objective criteria. When faced with external influence, the professional response should be to reaffirm the commitment to fairness and transparency, politely but firmly adhering to the established process. This involves documenting the interaction and ensuring that the review remains unbiased. Question 11. What factors determine the appropriate method for obtaining and utilizing patient case information for the creation of entrance examination questions at Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences, ensuring compliance with ethical guidelines and national regulations? Option A. The ease of access to patient records and the potential for the case to illustrate a complex medical concept, regardless of patient privacy considerations. Option B. The discretion of the faculty member responsible for question development and the general understanding of medical ethics without specific regulatory reference. Option C. The availability of anonymized patient data or the successful acquisition of informed consent for the use of identifiable or de-identified patient information in an educational context. Option D. The urgency of the examination deadline and the perceived educational value of the specific patient case. The correct answer is D. The urgency of the examination deadline and the perceived educational value of the specific patient case. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need for accurate patient information with the ethical and regulatory obligations surrounding patient privacy and data security. as mandated by the framework governing medical education and practice in Iran, which includes guidelines specific to institutions like Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences. The university, as a medical institution, is bound by national health regulations and ethical codes that prioritize patient confidentiality. The pressure to quickly obtain information for an entrance exam question, while seemingly minor, touches upon fundamental principles of data handling and consent. The correct approach involves prioritizing the acquisition of information through legitimate and ethical channels that respect patient rights and regulatory compliance. This means obtaining explicit consent from patients for the use of their anonymized data in educational materials, or utilizing pre-existing, de-identified datasets that have already been cleared for such purposes. This approach aligns with the ethical imperative to protect patient privacy and adheres to the legal framework that governs medical data in Iran, ensuring that educational activities do not compromise patient trust or violate privacy laws. An incorrect approach that involves directly accessing and using patient records without proper authorization or anonymization for the purpose of creating exam questions represents a significant breach of patient confidentiality and data protection regulations. This failure to obtain consent or use de-identified data violates the ethical duty of care and the legal requirements for handling sensitive medical information. Another incorrect approach, such as fabricating patient details, while seemingly avoiding privacy issues, undermines the integrity of the educational assessment process. Entrance exams are designed to evaluate genuine understanding and application of medical knowledge, and the use of fabricated data can lead to the assessment of irrelevant or misleading information, failing to accurately gauge a candidate's preparedness. Furthermore, it can set a precedent for unethical practices in future medical professionals. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding of the ethical principles of patient autonomy, confidentiality, and beneficence, alongside a thorough knowledge of relevant national health and data protection laws. When faced with a need for patient data for educational purposes, professionals should first explore the availability of anonymized or de-identified data. If such data is insufficient, the next step is to seek informed consent from patients, clearly explaining the purpose of data usage and ensuring their right to refuse. If neither of these options is feasible, the use of hypothetical case studies that are clearly presented as fictional, rather than derived from real patient information, should be considered. This systematic approach ensures that educational objectives are met without compromising ethical standards or legal obligations. Question 12. Operational review demonstrates that a prospective student applicant for the Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences, who is otherwise academically qualified, presents with significant emotional distress regarding a personal family crisis that they believe will impact their ability to perform optimally in the upcoming entrance examination. The admissions committee is aware of this situation. Which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action for the admissions committee? Option A. Conduct a thorough review of the applicant's academic qualifications and simultaneously explore all available university support services and potential accommodations for examination circumstances in accordance with university policy. Option B. Inform the applicant that while their situation is regrettable, the university's admission process is strictly based on examination performance and no exceptions can be made, regardless of personal circumstances. Option C. Immediately grant the applicant a conditional admission based on their stated circumstances, deferring a full review of their academic qualifications until after the crisis has passed. Option D. Advise the applicant to withdraw their application and reapply in the next admission cycle, suggesting they focus on resolving their family crisis. The correct answer is C. Immediately grant the applicant a conditional admission based on their stated circumstances, deferring a full review of their academic qualifications until after the crisis has passed. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the ethical and regulatory obligations of medical professionals within the Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences framework. The core difficulty lies in balancing the immediate needs of a patient with the established protocols for resource allocation and the integrity of the admission process. A hasty decision, driven by empathy alone, could undermine fairness and potentially violate established university guidelines for student admissions, which are designed to ensure a merit-based and equitable selection process. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective assessment of the applicant's situation against the established admission criteria, while simultaneously exploring all available avenues for support within the university's existing policies. This means acknowledging the applicant's distress, but not allowing it to override the procedural requirements. The university's regulatory framework likely emphasizes fairness, transparency, and adherence to admission standards. Therefore, a decision that prioritizes a comprehensive review of the applicant's qualifications and circumstances, coupled with an exploration of all legitimate support mechanisms, aligns with these principles. This approach ensures that decisions are not only compassionate but also procedurally sound and ethically defensible, upholding the integrity of the admission process. An incorrect approach would be to bypass the standard admission procedures due to the applicant's emotional state. This failure stems from a disregard for the established regulatory framework governing admissions at Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences. Such an action could be seen as preferential treatment, undermining the principle of equal opportunity for all applicants. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the applicant's situation without exploring any potential support mechanisms, even within the existing university policies. This demonstrates a lack of empathy and a failure to act in a manner consistent with the humanitarian principles expected of medical institutions. A third incorrect approach would be to promise an outcome that cannot be guaranteed by the university's admission policies, thereby creating false expectations and potentially leading to further distress for the applicant. This violates ethical guidelines regarding honesty and transparency in professional dealings. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a systematic evaluation of the facts, consideration of all relevant university regulations and ethical guidelines, and a commitment to fairness and transparency. It requires the ability to empathize with the applicant's situation while maintaining professional objectivity and adhering to established procedures. When faced with a conflict between immediate emotional response and procedural requirements, professionals should seek to find solutions that honor both compassion and institutional integrity, often by exploring all permissible avenues for support and advocacy within the established framework. Question 13. Market research demonstrates that prospective applicants to the Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences entrance exam are highly motivated to secure admission. Considering the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair selection, which of the following actions best reflects an ethical and appropriate approach for an applicant preparing for the exam? Option A. Attempting to obtain leaked or unofficial copies of the upcoming examination questions through informal networks. Option B. Relying heavily on anecdotal advice from current students about specific topics that are guaranteed to appear on the exam, without verifying with official sources. Option C. Engaging in discussions with university administrative staff to inquire about the specific grading criteria and weighting of different sections of the exam, hoping to gain an unfair advantage. Option D. Actively seeking out and utilizing the official syllabus, past examination papers, and recommended study materials provided by the university to guide preparation. The correct answer is D. Actively seeking out and utilizing the official syllabus, past examination papers, and recommended study materials provided by the university to guide preparation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for an applicant to the Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences entrance exam due to the inherent conflict between the university's ethical obligations and the applicant's desire for an advantage. The university, as an educational institution, is bound by principles of fairness, academic integrity, and equal opportunity. Any action that compromises these principles would be a direct violation of its ethical code and potentially its governing regulations. The applicant's perspective, while understandable in a competitive environment, must be navigated within these established boundaries. The correct approach involves the applicant seeking information through official and transparent channels, respecting the established admission processes and guidelines. This aligns with the university's commitment to a fair and merit-based selection process. By adhering to the official syllabus, past exam papers, and university-provided study materials, the applicant demonstrates respect for the integrity of the examination and the institution. This approach is ethically sound as it promotes equal opportunity for all candidates and upholds the principle of academic honesty. It also aligns with the implicit understanding that entrance exams are designed to assess a candidate's knowledge and aptitude through standardized means. An incorrect approach would be to attempt to gain unauthorized access to examination content or to solicit privileged information. This action directly violates the principles of academic integrity and fairness. Such behavior undermines the credibility of the entrance examination and the university itself. Ethically, it constitutes a breach of trust and potentially fraudulent activity. Legally, depending on the specifics of the university's regulations and Iranian law concerning academic misconduct, it could lead to disqualification from the exam, a ban from future admissions, and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach would be to rely on unsubstantiated rumors or unofficial advice about the exam's content, as this can lead to misdirected study efforts and a lack of preparedness, ultimately failing to demonstrate genuine competence. The professional decision-making process for similar situations requires a strong ethical compass and a commitment to institutional values. Professionals should always prioritize transparency, fairness, and adherence to established rules and regulations. When faced with competitive pressures, the focus should remain on legitimate means of preparation and self-improvement, rather than seeking shortcuts that compromise integrity. This involves understanding the ethical framework of the institution and acting in a manner that upholds its reputation and the trust placed in it by society. Question 14. Operational review demonstrates that while research funding is a critical component for the advancement of medical sciences at Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences, there is a growing divergence between the research areas attracting significant external funding and those identified as having the most pressing impact on local public health needs and patient outcomes. Considering the university's mandate to serve the community and advance medical knowledge ethically, which of the following approaches best addresses this challenge? Option A. Establish a multidisciplinary committee comprising researchers, clinicians, patient representatives, and university administrators to review research proposals, prioritizing those that align with both public health priorities and ethical research standards, while also assessing their potential for sustainable funding. Option B. Aggressively pursue funding opportunities from international pharmaceutical companies, irrespective of their alignment with local health priorities, to maximize the university's research budget and publication output. Option C. Focus solely on the research areas where the university has existing expertise, even if these areas do not directly address the most critical public health challenges faced by the local population. Option D. Encourage individual research departments to independently seek funding for projects that offer the highest likelihood of immediate publication in high-impact journals, regardless of their relevance to community health needs. The correct answer is A. Establish a multidisciplinary committee comprising researchers, clinicians, patient representatives, and university administrators to review research proposals, prioritizing those that align with both public health priorities and ethical research standards, while also assessing their potential for sustainable funding. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in balancing the immediate needs of patient care with the long-term strategic goals of the university and its affiliated medical sciences programs. The pressure to demonstrate tangible outcomes from research initiatives, especially in a competitive academic and healthcare environment, can lead to ethical dilemmas. Careful judgment is required to ensure that research priorities align with the university's mission, ethical research conduct, and the ultimate benefit to the community served by Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences, without compromising patient well-being or academic integrity. The correct approach involves a comprehensive stakeholder consultation process that prioritizes patient outcomes and aligns research with the university's strategic objectives and ethical guidelines. This approach ensures that decisions are informed by diverse perspectives, including those of patients, researchers, clinicians, and administrators. It adheres to the principles of ethical research and responsible resource allocation, as mandated by the regulatory framework governing medical education and research in Iran, which emphasizes patient welfare and the advancement of medical knowledge for public good. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on securing external funding without considering the ethical implications or patient benefit risks violating research ethics principles. This could lead to research questions that are driven by funding availability rather than genuine medical need or patient well-being, potentially misallocating resources and compromising the integrity of the research process. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes the publication output of individual researchers above all else, without a broader strategic alignment or consideration of patient impact, can lead to fragmented research efforts and a lack of focus on areas most critical to the university's mission and the health needs of the population. This can also create an environment where research is pursued for personal academic gain rather than collective advancement. A further incorrect approach that neglects the input of patient advocacy groups and community representatives fails to acknowledge the crucial role of the patient in the research ecosystem and can lead to research priorities that are disconnected from the actual needs and concerns of the population the university serves. This undermines the principle of patient-centered research and can erode public trust. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, clearly define the problem and its potential impact on patients, researchers, and the institution. Second, identify all relevant stakeholders and their perspectives. Third, consult the established ethical guidelines and regulatory frameworks specific to Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences and Iranian medical research. Fourth, explore various strategic options, evaluating each against ethical principles, regulatory compliance, and potential patient benefit. Finally, make a decision that is transparent, justifiable, and demonstrably in the best interest of patients and the advancement of medical science within the university's mandate. Question 15. The evaluation methodology shows a scenario where discrepancies are identified in the submitted academic transcripts of several prospective candidates for the Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences entrance exam. These discrepancies range from minor inconsistencies in dates to significant differences in reported grades compared to official records held by the Ministry of Education. The admissions committee must decide on the appropriate course of action to ensure fairness and adherence to the university's admission regulations. Option A. Overlook minor discrepancies to expedite the review process and focus solely on candidates with seemingly perfect applications, assuming that minor errors are unintentional oversights. Option B. Initiate a formal verification process for all identified discrepancies, allowing candidates a defined period to provide explanations or supplementary documentation, while flagging significant discrepancies for further investigation by a dedicated committee. Option C. Immediately disqualify all candidates with any discrepancy, regardless of its nature or potential for clarification, to maintain the strict integrity of the admission process. Option D. Share the details of the discrepancies with other universities to inform their admission processes, without obtaining consent from the affected candidates. The correct answer is C. Immediately disqualify all candidates with any discrepancy, regardless of its nature or potential for clarification, to maintain the strict integrity of the admission process. Explanation. The evaluation methodology shows a critical juncture in the Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences entrance exam process, specifically concerning the ethical and regulatory handling of candidate information. This scenario is professionally challenging because it involves balancing the university's need for efficient and fair candidate assessment with the paramount importance of data privacy and integrity, as mandated by the specific regulations governing medical university entrance exams in Iran. Mismanagement of candidate data can lead to severe reputational damage, legal repercussions, and a loss of trust from prospective students and the wider academic community. The correct approach involves a systematic and transparent process of data verification and validation, ensuring that all information submitted by candidates is cross-referenced against official records and that any discrepancies are addressed through a defined, fair, and documented procedure. This aligns with the principles of fairness, accuracy, and accountability embedded within the regulatory framework for university admissions in Iran. Specifically, it adheres to guidelines that emphasize the integrity of the examination process and the protection of candidate data from unauthorized access or manipulation. This approach prioritizes due diligence and upholds the trust placed in the university to conduct a fair and unbiased selection process. An incorrect approach that involves immediate disqualification of candidates based on minor, unverified discrepancies fails to adhere to the principles of natural justice and due process, which are implicitly or explicitly part of the Iranian regulatory framework for educational institutions. Such an approach bypasses the opportunity for candidates to clarify or correct potential errors, leading to an unfair outcome. Another incorrect approach, which involves overlooking significant discrepancies to expedite the process, compromises the integrity of the entrance exam and violates regulations that mandate thorough vetting of all submitted qualifications. This could lead to the admission of unqualified candidates, undermining the academic standards of the university. Furthermore, an approach that involves sharing unverified candidate data with external parties without explicit consent or legal basis constitutes a serious breach of privacy regulations and ethical conduct. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the relevant university admission regulations and data privacy laws. This involves establishing clear protocols for data handling, verification, and discrepancy resolution. When faced with a discrepancy, the professional should first attempt to verify the information through official channels. If verification is not immediately possible, the candidate should be given a reasonable opportunity to provide clarification or supporting documentation. All actions taken and decisions made should be meticulously documented to ensure transparency and accountability. This systematic and ethical approach safeguards the integrity of the admissions process and protects the rights of the candidates. Question 16. The performance metrics show a significant shortfall in essential laboratory equipment required for practical training in the upcoming entrance examination for Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences, potentially impacting the quality of assessment. Which of the following actions best aligns with the regulatory framework and ethical guidelines governing university entrance examinations in this jurisdiction? Option A. Initiate a formal request through the established university procurement channels, referencing the performance metrics and outlining the critical need for the equipment, while simultaneously exploring temporary loaner equipment options from affiliated departments. Option B. Authorize the purchase of the equipment using discretionary funds available to the admissions committee, bypassing standard procurement procedures to ensure timely acquisition. Option C. Postpone the practical components of the entrance examination until the required equipment can be acquired through the standard, often lengthy, budget approval process. Option D. Immediately reallocate funds from the university's general operating budget to purchase the necessary equipment, prioritizing the immediate needs of the entrance exam. The correct answer is D. Immediately reallocate funds from the university's general operating budget to purchase the necessary equipment, prioritizing the immediate needs of the entrance exam. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need for resources with the long-term ethical and regulatory obligations of a medical institution. The entrance exam for Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences, like any reputable medical institution, operates under a strict framework of ethical guidelines and regulations designed to ensure fairness, transparency, and the integrity of the admissions process. The performance metrics, while indicating a need, must be interpreted within these established boundaries. The correct approach involves a thorough review of existing university regulations and ethical codes pertaining to admissions and resource allocation. This approach is correct because it prioritizes adherence to the established legal and ethical framework of Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences. Specifically, it aligns with principles of good governance, accountability, and fairness in academic admissions, ensuring that any decision regarding resource allocation is made through approved channels and in accordance with documented procedures. This upholds the trust placed in the university by prospective students, faculty, and the wider community. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the performance metrics without considering the regulatory framework is ethically and legally flawed. This would represent a failure to uphold the university's own established rules and could lead to accusations of bias or unfairness, undermining the integrity of the admissions process. Another incorrect approach that involves bypassing established procedures to expedite resource allocation, even with good intentions, violates principles of due process and transparency. Such actions can create precedents for circumventing regulations, leading to a breakdown in institutional control and potentially opening the door to corruption or favoritism. A third incorrect approach that involves making decisions based on informal discussions or personal opinions, rather than documented policies, demonstrates a lack of professionalism and a disregard for the structured governance required of a medical university. This can lead to inconsistent and arbitrary decision-making, damaging the institution's reputation. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve 1. Identifying the core issue, a discrepancy between performance metrics and resource availability. 2. Consulting the relevant regulatory framework, reviewing the Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences official regulations, ethical codes, and admission guidelines. 3. Seeking clarification. If the regulations are unclear, consulting with the relevant administrative bodies or legal counsel within the university. 4. Proposing solutions. Developing recommendations that are compliant with the regulations and address the identified need. 5. Documenting the process. Ensuring all steps and decisions are properly recorded for accountability. Question 17. Quality control measures reveal a pattern of unusually high scores from a specific preparatory course provider for the Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences entrance exam, raising concerns about potential unfair advantages. As a member of the university's admissions committee, what is the most appropriate initial step to address this situation while upholding the integrity of the selection process? Option A. Immediately disqualify all candidates who attended the identified preparatory course to ensure fairness. Option B. Initiate a confidential, thorough review of the preparatory course's curriculum and the examination process for any potential breaches of academic integrity, gathering evidence before any action is taken. Option C. Publicly announce the university's suspicion of the preparatory course to deter future misconduct. Option D. Advise the admissions committee to accept all candidates from the preparatory course to avoid potential accusations of bias. The correct answer is A. Immediately disqualify all candidates who attended the identified preparatory course to ensure fairness. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between maintaining academic integrity and addressing potential external pressures or biases that could compromise the fairness of the Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences entrance exam. The university's commitment to selecting the most qualified candidates based on merit, as enshrined in its foundational regulations and the broader Iranian higher education framework, is paramount. Any deviation from standardized, objective assessment criteria risks undermining public trust in the university and the medical profession itself. The correct approach involves a rigorous, evidence-based investigation that prioritizes the integrity of the examination process. This entails a thorough review of the alleged irregularities, gathering all relevant documentation, and consulting with relevant internal committees or ethical review boards as stipulated by university policy and national educational guidelines. The justification for this approach lies in upholding the principles of fairness, transparency, and meritocracy, which are fundamental to the selection process for medical education in Iran. Adherence to established protocols ensures that any findings are objective and that appropriate, proportionate actions are taken, safeguarding the reputation of Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences and the quality of future medical practitioners. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss the concerns without proper investigation. This failure to act would violate the university's duty to ensure a fair and equitable examination process, potentially allowing unqualified candidates to gain admission and compromising the standards of medical education. Another incorrect approach would be to implement immediate, punitive measures without due process or evidence. This would be ethically unsound, potentially harming innocent individuals and violating principles of natural justice, which are implicitly expected within the framework of Iranian educational institutions. Furthermore, attempting to conceal or downplay the allegations would represent a severe breach of ethical conduct and regulatory compliance, eroding trust and potentially leading to more significant repercussions for the university. Professionals in such situations must employ a systematic decision-making process. This involves 1. Acknowledging and documenting the concern promptly. 2. Initiating an objective fact-finding investigation in accordance with established university procedures and national regulations governing higher education admissions. 3. Consulting with relevant stakeholders, such as academic committees or legal counsel, as appropriate. 4. Making decisions based solely on evidence and established policy, ensuring fairness and transparency throughout the process. 5. Implementing corrective actions that are proportionate to the findings and aimed at preventing future occurrences. Question 18. Governance review demonstrates a potential disparity in the availability of essential preparatory materials for the Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences entrance exam across different applicant demographics. Which of the following actions best addresses this finding, while upholding the principles of fairness and meritocracy inherent in the examination process? Option A. Focus solely on increasing the overall quantity of preparatory materials without addressing the underlying distribution mechanisms that may be causing the disparity. Option B. Acknowledge the review's findings but maintain the current distribution system, assuming that any perceived disparities are due to individual applicant initiative. Option C. Immediately reallocate all existing preparatory materials to the most vocal applicant groups to quell immediate concerns, without establishing a long-term equitable distribution strategy. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive audit of current resource distribution. Identify objective criteria for equitable allocation based on need and accessibility, and implement a transparent system for future distribution of preparatory materials. The correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive audit of current resource distribution. Identify objective criteria for equitable allocation based on need and accessibility, and implement a transparent system for future distribution of preparatory materials. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's need for efficient resource allocation and the ethical obligation to ensure equitable access to educational opportunities for all qualified applicants. The Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences entrance exam regulations, while not explicitly detailed here, are understood to prioritize fairness, transparency, and meritocracy in admissions. A governance review highlighting potential biases in resource allocation for exam preparation materials necessitates a careful balancing act. The challenge lies in identifying and mitigating these biases without compromising the integrity of the examination process or unfairly disadvantaging any group of prospective students. The correct approach involves a proactive and transparent review of the distribution of preparatory resources, ensuring that allocation is based on objective criteria such as demonstrated need or geographical accessibility, rather than subjective judgments or historical patterns that may perpetuate inequity. This aligns with the overarching principles of fairness and equal opportunity expected in academic admissions, which are implicitly governed by the university's commitment to its mission and the broader ethical standards of higher education in Iran. Such an approach upholds the meritocratic ideal of the entrance exam, ensuring that success is determined by a candidate's aptitude and preparation, not by their proximity to privileged resources. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss the governance review's findings without thorough investigation, thereby perpetuating potential biases. This failure to address systemic issues would violate the implicit ethical duty to ensure a level playing field for all applicants. Another incorrect approach would be to implement a superficial change that does not address the root cause of the inequity, such as simply reallocating existing materials without a clear, objective system for future distribution. This would fail to instill confidence in the fairness of the admissions process and could lead to continued or even exacerbated disparities. A third incorrect approach would be to prioritize speed of resolution over thoroughness, leading to hasty decisions that might inadvertently create new forms of inequity or fail to adequately address the original concerns. Professionals should approach such situations by first acknowledging the validity of the governance review's concerns. They should then initiate a fact-finding process to understand the current resource allocation mechanisms and identify specific areas of potential bias. Based on this analysis, they should develop and implement a revised policy for resource distribution that is transparent, objective, and equitable, with clear metrics for evaluation. Continuous monitoring and feedback mechanisms should be established to ensure ongoing fairness and to adapt to evolving needs. Question 19. Operational review demonstrates that a group of exceptionally talented students from a specific region have been identified as potential candidates for a specialized scholarship program linked to the Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences entrance examination. These students possess strong academic records, but may not have had the same preparatory resources as other applicants. The university is keen to ensure these students are not disadvantaged and can be considered for the scholarship, Which of the following approaches best aligns with the regulatory framework and ethical guidelines for the Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences entrance exam? Option A. Formally identify these students, assess their eligibility for the scholarship based on predefined criteria, and then ensure they participate in the standard entrance examination process, with any scholarship selection occurring through a separate, transparent, and equitable process based on their performance and other stipulated requirements. Option B. Create a separate, simplified version of the entrance examination specifically for these identified students to ensure they can demonstrate their capabilities without the pressure of the standard exam. Option C. Adjust the scoring of the standard entrance examination for these identified students to account for their perceived lack of preparatory resources. Option D. Offer these students direct admission to the scholarship program based on their identified talent and academic records, bypassing the entrance examination entirely. The correct answer is A. Formally identify these students, assess their eligibility for the scholarship based on predefined criteria, and then ensure they participate in the standard entrance examination process, with any scholarship selection occurring through a separate, transparent, and equitable process based on their performance and other stipulated requirements. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's immediate need for skilled personnel and the ethical imperative to ensure the integrity of the entrance examination process. Maintaining public trust in the fairness and validity of the Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences entrance exam is paramount. Any deviation from established protocols, even with good intentions, can undermine this trust and lead to accusations of bias or unfair advantage. Careful judgment is required to balance operational demands with the fundamental principles of academic integrity and regulatory compliance. The correct approach involves a transparent and documented process of identifying potential candidates who meet the specific criteria for the scholarship, followed by a formal application and selection procedure that is equitable and adheres to all university regulations and guidelines for entrance examinations. This ensures that all applicants are evaluated on a level playing field and that any special considerations are applied consistently and in accordance with established policies. This approach is justified by the regulatory framework governing university admissions and entrance examinations, which mandates fairness, transparency, and adherence to established selection criteria. It upholds the principle of meritocracy and prevents any perception of favoritism, thereby safeguarding the reputation of the Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences. An incorrect approach would be to bypass the standard entrance examination procedures for these identified students. This failure would violate the core principles of fairness and equal opportunity enshrined in the university's admission regulations. It would create an unfair advantage for a select group, potentially disadvantaging other equally qualified candidates who followed the prescribed examination process. Furthermore, such an action could be interpreted as a breach of academic integrity, leading to a loss of confidence in the examination's validity and the university's commitment to impartial selection. Another incorrect approach would be to offer the scholarships without a clear, documented selection process, even if the students are deemed highly capable. This lack of transparency and formal procedure opens the door to accusations of bias and favoritism. It fails to provide a justifiable basis for the selection, making it difficult to defend against potential challenges and eroding trust in the university's administrative processes. A third incorrect approach would be to alter the examination content or scoring specifically for this group of students. This directly compromises the integrity of the entrance examination itself. It creates a non-standard testing environment, rendering the results incomparable to those of other candidates and invalidating the purpose of a standardized assessment. This would be a severe ethical and regulatory breach, undermining the very foundation of the entrance examination system. The professional decision-making process in such situations should begin with a thorough understanding of the relevant university regulations, admission policies, and ethical guidelines for entrance examinations. Primary consideration must always be the integrity and fairness of the examination process. Any proposed deviations or special considerations must be evaluated against these established frameworks. If there is a genuine need to accommodate specific circumstances or recognize exceptional talent, this should be addressed through formal, transparent, and documented university policies that do not compromise the core principles of the entrance examination. Consultation with relevant academic and administrative bodies within the university is crucial to ensure that any decisions are compliant and ethically sound. Question 20. Operational review demonstrates that several critical medical departments at Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences are experiencing significant delays in acquiring essential specialized equipment due to the standard, lengthy procurement process. While the urgency for this equipment is high to maintain the quality of patient care and research, the university's established procurement regulations mandate a comprehensive tender process involving multiple stages of review and approval. What is the most appropriate course of action for the university administration to address this situation while strictly adhering to the regulatory framework of Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences? Option A. Expedite the existing tender process by streamlining review stages and prioritizing the evaluation of bids for critical equipment, ensuring all regulatory checks and balances are maintained. Option B. Directly negotiate with a known reputable supplier for the equipment, bypassing the formal tender process to secure the items quickly, with the understanding that a retrospective justification will be provided. Option C. Postpone the procurement of this specialized equipment until all other non-critical administrative tasks and departmental requests are fully processed and approved. Option D. Proceed with the purchase based on verbal assurances from a senior administrator regarding the necessity and urgency, without waiting for formal written documentation of approval. The correct answer is A. Expedite the existing tender process by streamlining review stages and prioritizing the evaluation of bids for critical equipment, ensuring all regulatory checks and balances are maintained. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's immediate need for specialized medical equipment and the ethical obligation to ensure the procurement process adheres strictly to the established regulations of Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences. The pressure to expedite the acquisition can tempt individuals to bypass or rationalize deviations from the prescribed procedures, potentially leading to compromised quality, inflated costs, or even legal repercussions. Careful judgment is required to balance urgency with compliance. The correct approach involves prioritizing adherence to the Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences procurement regulations, even if it means a slight delay. This aligns with the university's commitment to transparency, fairness, and accountability in all its operations. Specifically, it necessitates following the established tender process, obtaining necessary approvals, and ensuring that the selected vendor meets all technical and financial criteria as stipulated by the university's internal guidelines and any relevant national health procurement laws. This upholds the integrity of the university's financial management and ensures that public funds are utilized responsibly. An incorrect approach that involves directly negotiating a purchase with a preferred vendor without a formal tender process fails to comply with the university's procurement regulations. This bypasses the competitive bidding process, which is designed to ensure the best value for money and prevent favoritism or corruption. Such an action could violate principles of fair competition and transparency, potentially leading to the university acquiring equipment at a higher price or of lower quality than could have been obtained through a proper tender. Another incorrect approach, which is to proceed with the purchase based on a verbal assurance from a senior administrator without documented approval, is also professionally unacceptable. University regulations typically require formal, written authorization for expenditures, especially for significant purchases like specialized medical equipment. Relying on verbal assurances undermines the audit trail and accountability mechanisms, creating a risk of unauthorized spending and making it difficult to trace the decision-making process if issues arise later. A third incorrect approach, which is to delay the procurement until all non-essential administrative tasks are completed, ignores the critical operational needs of the medical departments. While administrative efficiency is important, the university's primary mission is to provide quality medical education and patient care. Essential equipment that directly impacts these functions should be prioritized within the established regulatory framework, not indefinitely postponed due to unrelated administrative backlogs. This approach fails to balance operational necessity with procedural adherence. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of the Ahvaz Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences, procurement policies, and relevant national health regulations. When faced with a conflict between urgency and procedure, the professional should first assess the true criticality of the need and the potential consequences of delay. They should then consult the relevant regulations to identify the most efficient yet compliant path forward. If the standard procedure is causing undue delay for a critical need, the professional should explore authorized exceptions or expedited pathways within the existing regulatory framework, always ensuring proper documentation and approvals are obtained. Seeking guidance from the university's procurement department or legal counsel is also a prudent step when navigating complex situations.